All right, welcome back. You've seen part one, presumably, of this. This is part two of the Frontliner. So we're going to talk about how to build a Frontliner. And just a little refresher, the Frontliner is a melee character like the Skirmisher and Tank, but the Frontliner is the balanced offense and defense, right? Skirmisher is all offense. You're kind of a glass cannon running into combat, running out of combat. The Tank, you are the super tank, right? Super high defense, maybe not very good damage. So the Frontliner is the balance in between those. And if you're not really sure where to start, either because you're new or because you know you're a role play forward and you just don't care that much, right? You're more interested in just getting going quickly with mechanics, and you would just want to have a feel good that you're going to have a solid character, or maybe just trying this for the new time. For the first time, I would just start with one of the frontliners, the second column of ratings there. One of the frontliners that I've already rated as an A or maybe a B, right? Barbarian, if you want to make this easier on yourself, Barbarian is an A, Fighter's an A, Paladin's an A, Ranger's an A. They can all be A level frontliners without even factoring in your subclass, your background, your species, your feats. So you can just pick one of those and then feel free to pick any subclass, any background, any species to match whatever fantasy you're going for. And that's the key here. I don't want to lock you into a specific this build only to be most optimized. That's not what I'm going for. If you want to be a little more, have a little less flexibility, you can go cleric or monk. And then you are going to be more dependent on some of the other choices you make to boost up your abilities as a frontliner. But either way, you'll be fine. All right, so let's talk about some of the things you're looking for a frontliner. First off, there's a few ways to build frontliners, a few build kind of high level structures. One of those is the heavy weapon build. So you're going to be using one big weapon, swinging it with two hands, like the great sword, the great axe, the maul, halberd, glaive, pike, things like that. So the fighting styles you're looking for are defense or great weapon fighting. I would only get great weapon fighting on one of the weapons that does 2d6, not 1d10 or 1d12. You just get a lot more mileage out of it in the 2d6 scenario. Weapon masteries, cleave, graze are great choices. Probably two best to start with. Uh, Topple is a good choice, but I would check with your party, make sure you don't have any ranged attackers in the party, because if you topple and you have ranged attackers, then you're actually hurting your ranged attacker's ability to deal damage. So you don't want to mix those things. Origin feats, alert, lucky, tough, all good options. Savage attacker is a interesting option. It actually is a decent um, damage boost and it helps more on the smaller. So it's kind of the opposite of great weapon fighting in the way the mechanics and the math work. Savage attacker gives you a bigger boost on 1d10, 1d12 weapons, a smaller boost on 2d6 weapons, and it only boosts one attack per round, and you're supposed to declare it first. So it's a little tricky, but if you can remember to use it, and that's the biggest issue I've seen with Savage Attacker, is I've seen a number of people take it and they never remember to use it. They just always forget. And I try to remind them sometimes, but even I don't remember all the time. So it's just always forgotten. And that's the biggest reason to not take Savage Attacker. But if you can remember, go ahead and try it. And then general feats you're looking for with a heavy weapon build are the Great Weapon Master, which is one of the most important ones to get. That's just a straight damage boost on every attack you make as part of your attack action. I make sure if you're going to get that you have chosen a class that's going to give you extra extra attack, because that's going to multiply, right? Because every attack as part of your action is going to get boosted, so that's good. Sentinel is another good option. Sure, it can help lock down enemies, and that's one of the things you're supposed to be doing, is keeping enemies from moving past you. You don't have as much responsibility for that as a tank, but having some ability to do that is still a good thing as a frontliner. But more importantly, it's a good way to weaponize your reaction, and they've removed that pesky clause that said that you can't use it if the person attacked, your ally that it gets attacked also has Sentinel. Then in 2014 there was a clause that says, well, this doesn't trigger in that scenario. They've removed that, which never made any sense. So you can just have the whole front line have Sentinel, and it doesn't matter who they attack, they're getting a reaction attacked by everyone else. So it's a pretty good way to weaponize your reaction. And then durable, solid option. It gives you a way to bonus action heal yourself every round. It's a decent amount of healing, and it gives you Constitution boost. So that's a good one. And Mage Slayer is a really important one. That one is going to help you because as a frontliner, you're probably maxing out your physical stats. Um, And so your mental stats are going to be pretty weak. You probably don't have proficiency in a lot of your mental stats. And this is a good way to shore that up. It just gives you the ability to just say, nope, I save instead on one mental stat saving throw per short rest. Those are not going to come up super often, but probably will happen every couple of fights, in lower levels every couple of fights. And just being able to do it on auto save once per short rest is actually going to mean at low levels and like tier 1 of play, you're probably going to save every time. You're going to be able to use Mage Slayer to block every single mental save you have to make in tier 1, maybe even tier 2. You start getting into tier 3 and 4, you start seeing those saving throws a lot more, and so you may not be able to block every single one with Mage Slayer, but just blocking the first one, that's going to be a huge help. And since you are balanced offense defense, you're going to need to find your own mix of, well, do I take an offensive feat or a defensive feat? And which defensive feat, for example, right? So great weapon. So the interesting thing about great weapon master is it only adds 2 damage when you're at level 4 per attack. So it's not very much. At level 5, it upgrades to 3 damage. So it's going to add damage, but it scales up as your proficiency bonus goes up. So maybe you don't want that right at 4th level. Maybe you want a defensive feat right at 4th level. And do you take durable or mage slayer? Frankly, for me, that would depend on which class I'm playing. Like the paladin has proficiency in wisdom and charisma saving throws, and at level 6 to get that aura of protection boosts all of my saving throws. I might not ever get mage slayer on my paladin. But on my fighter, who has no proficiency in any of the mental stats, and probably doesn't have any great mental stats, I might get Mage Slayer right at level 4 on a fighter, or a barbarian even more so. Moving on to the 2 weapon builds. So this is, you're fighting with a weapon in each hand. They have to be light, so they can't even be non-heavy. They have to have the actual light property. Fighting style, yeah, you want the 2 weapon fighting style. Without that, let's call it the offhand attack. They don't use that reference in the game, but you have an offhand attack, right? You're right-handed, that's your main hand attack, and you got an offhand in your left hand. Your offhand attack will not add your ability modifier to the damage. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot, right? Without that, then your offhand is at best doing a 1d6 with no bonus to the damage. So you might just roll a 1, and your whole spec that you're building here for this character, you might just result in only adding 1 damage with that second attack, or that offhand attack. So you're adding your ability modifier is a huge boost. So at level 4, you should have a +4 on your primary attack ability score, and that would mean you're adding 4 to the damage, right? So going from a 1d6 with no modifier to the damage to 1d6 +4 is more than doubling the damage of that attack. More than double, because the average damage of 1d6 is 3.5. 4 is more than 3.5. So it adds more damage. It more than doubles the damage of that attack. So definitely get it. It's well worth it. Weapon masteries, Nick is probably your number 1, right? Nick allows you to make that offhand attack, instead of as a bonus action, it becomes part of your action. So it frees up your bonus action to do other things. So Nick is super important for 2-weapon fighting. I would make sure I got Nick if I'm going to do a 2-weapon fighting build. And we're going to skip over to Vex, which is also good, because you don't need Nick on every weapon, right? You only need Nick on the one weapon that you're making the offhand attack with. So put Vex on your main hand weapon, and now you're getting the advantage of Vex for advantage on attack sometimes, and combining that with Nick. That's a great combo to go with. If it's too confusing, just stick with Nick. You can get Nick's on a scimitar, so you can just go double scimitars, which is a cool fantasy, and just fight with dual scimitars, and don't worry about 2 different kinds of weapons. Then there's topple. Again, you can get topple on a few of the options here, and make sure you check with the rest of the party so you're not crippling your ranged attackers with this. Origin feats. Alert, lucky, and tough. All good options here, right? Lucky for an advantage on attack when you need it. Alert to get move first in combat. Tough because you're not holding a shield, so you might need some more hit points because you're going to get hit more often. General feats you're looking for. Dual wielder is a solid one. Defensive duelist is a really good one. Then you got durable, mage slayer, and if you are a monk, weapon master, and specifically weapon master on monk to get the Nick property. So you can dual wield or 2-weapon fight as a monk and get more attacks than anyone else in the game. At level 5, you've got extra attacks, so you're making 3 attacks with your action, 2 attacks with your bonus action for with a flurry of blows. That's 5 attacks as a monk. At level what is it, 11, 10, 11, they get that 3rd attack with their flurry of blows, and now you're making 6 attacks every round, spending 1 key point to pull that off. That's more than anyone, right? Only a fighter who's action surging can tie you at level 11, and they'll beat you at level 20. But until then, you are the king of the number of attacks per round. And with you can just dual wield daggers, because the monk, with anything that qualifies as a monk weapon for them, they can actually use their martial arts die for the damage instead of the weapons die. So it doesn't matter that it's a D4 weapon with your dagger, you're still using your martial arts die, which scales up to D12 at level 17. So at level 17 as a monk, you could be making 6 attacks per round, each one doing 1d12 damage. That is crazy good. Monk's got a huge boost in 2024. Okay, dual wielder. That one's interesting. The main reason you want to do that on a 2-weapon fighting build is that if you combine it with Nick, so Nick moves the extra attack from light action property to your action, and dual wielder gives you another bonus action attack. So that would give you another attack on top of making your offhand attacks. You get essentially 2 offhand attacks. One is part of your action, one is part of your bonus action. So it's another attack, which is good. You know, if you really want to be a competitive damage dealer with 2-weapon fighting, you need that extra attack. The problem is that it's still your bonus action, right? And you're going to have a lot of contention, especially as you gain levels, a lot of contention for that bonus action, right? It's always like seductive to think that, oh, you know, if I get Hunter's Mark, or I'm a ranger and have Hunter's Mark, the number of attacks is multiplied, or the damage from Hunter's Mark is multiplied by the number of attacks. So if you get a lot of attacks, that's going to boost it. Yes, but Hunter's Mark requires your bonus action to cast and your bonus action to move. And it's pretty often that your target's going to die every round, right? You move your Hunter's Mark on somebody, you attack it, and the rest of your party attacks it, and it dies before your next turn. So you're going to spend your bonus action almost every turn just moving Hunter's Mark around. So dual wielder's great in theory. It doesn't work on every build. You know, you need to be very conscious of that bonus action and what else is contending for it. Defensive Duelist, on the other hand, is a fantastic pick. It's defense. It's a defense option, but it is super strong for a defense option. It's kind of like getting a shield spell on your martial character, and you can use it without spell slots, and you can just use it every round. So it does start at +2 AC, but it scales up to +6. So it starts off weaker than shield, but grows to be better than shield by the time you're done. And the monk can get it, or anyone can get it, as long as one weapon you're holding is a finesse weapon. So, and it doesn't matter if you're actually using a shield. So you could combine like a rapier or a short sword with a shield, and you could be you could have really strong defense with that. You know, get a taunt on you, and you're going to be a solid tank just with those 2 things alone. Durable, again, same as before in Mage Slayer. I would say the same as before. So good options there. Moving on to the sword and board build. The common colloquial name is sword and board. What it means is you're holding one weapon and a shield. So it doesn't have to be a sword, and hopefully your shield is not just a board. But that's why it's called that. All right. Fighting styles you're looking for. If you're going to lean into a defensive version, or the defensive edge side of a frontliner, then the defense fighting style might be something you want. It's a decent option on the other ones as well. If you want to just balance out, you know, you're not holding a shield, but you get a defensive fighting style to kind of balance your in the middle, your frontliner. That's still a great option. And if you want to lean into being more offensive with a sword and board build, then you can get the dueling fighting style, which adds 2 damage to every attack you make, as long as you're only holding one-handed weapon. It doesn't sound a lot, but it is a lot. That's actually, of all the fighting styles, one of the ones that adds the most damage on its own, right? Great weapon fighting adds like 0.75 average damage when you're using a 2-handed weapon, or a great sword, a 2d6 weapon. So 0.75 DPR. The two weapon fighting style, at when you only have one attack, adds probably a higher DPR. But as you start getting more and more attacks, it starts getting diluted, because the 2-weapon fighting is only adding damage to a single attack. It's just your offhand attack. So as you get more attacks as you level up, its net DPR increase starts dropping, and it drops quickly below 2. So the +2 from dueling is actually quite good. Now, there's a lot of other factors with your weapon, and you can't use like great weapon fighting with it. You can't use other things with it. So your net damage is probably still going to be lower, but as a fighting style, dueling is great for damage. I mean, imagine a fighter who's got 4 attacks per round, and you're adding +2 on each one of those. If they action surge, that's +2 on 8 attacks. It's a lot. And if they have a reaction attack, that's 9 attacks. So you're adding +2 damage on 9 attacks. That's a straight up, 18 plus 18 DPR. Very, very good. All right, weapon masteries you're looking for. Sap and is the only new one in this list. Topple, again, check with the rest of the party. Vex works the same as I described before. Sap is interesting because this is a defensive weapon mastery. So you could be hitting people, and everyone you hit is going to have disadvantage on their next attack. A lot of people think that's not very good. I actually think it's pretty good, especially if you take the strategy of using your multiple attacks to hit different people, right? Because it doesn't stack on one. If you hit one character or one monster like 2 or 3 times with sap, it doesn't stack in any way. They still only have disadvantage on their next attack. But let's say you're facing off with 3 monsters. Well, hit each of them once, and all 3 of them have disadvantage on their next attack. You're really reducing the whole enemy team's ability to damage your team. So it's actually a pretty good defensive strategy and a pretty good control effect that you can get as a marshal. So don't just ignore sap. It's a good thing. A lot of players I see just go all damage all the time, and they end up with a kind of an unbalanced party that gets killed by monsters pretty easily. So don't sleep on these defensive strategies and control strategies. All right, origin feats that are good for you. Same again, alert, lucky, and tough. All good options for your sword and board character. General feats, we see defensive duelist again, durable, mage slayer. All 3 of those I already talked about. Shield master is an interesting one. It's going to help you. It gives you kind of partial evasion on dexterity-based saving throws. Now, it doesn't boost your dexterity saving throws anymore, which is a bummer. They took that away, but gave it a +1 to ability score, which is probably a better trade-off. But still, it can help kind of shore up your dexterity saving throws, which are often not great on frontliners. But the part you want to check with your party on is that it can knock enemies prone. You get a shield bash effect that is a free when you take the attack action. So it takes no bonus action, doesn't take anything, doesn't replace one of your attacks. You just get an extra shield bash on top of your reaction, which is great. It doesn't do any damage. It just has a chance to knock them down. But again, if you're knocking somebody prone, check with the rest of the party. If you got ranged attackers, that's going to be crippling to them. And moving on. So we've got a couple of specialized builds here that really only apply in depending on your class. So you got the Monk Grappler build, which is a good option as a frontliner. So the feats you're looking for is probably Tavern Brawler, although it's not necessary. It just helps a little bit as a frontliner. So you can go with Lucky or Tough are also good options. You need to make sure that you get the right backgrounds that give you a bonus to Dexterity and Wisdom. So you're kind of locked in on just a few backgrounds there that are going to be tied to those origin feats. And then the general feat you're looking for is Grappler. You definitely want Grappler. As soon as you hit and land one of your grapples, you start having advantage in all of your attacks against that target. And that's going to really improve your damage. It's also going to help you be you're going to start functioning as a tank when you do that. So you're kind of getting a 2-for-1 there. So definitely get Grappler as your level 4 feat. After that, just use your ability score increases, your feats to increase your ability scores in Dexterity and Wisdom to max. And that's going to pretty much take all of your feats that you get throughout your entire character's lifetime. So that's probably the way to go. That's the easiest way to go. It's a solid way to go. If you are really comfortable with mechanics and you really want to do something else, go ahead. Feel free. You don't have to do this. This is just an easy way to get started. And then we have the Battlesmith Artificer build, which is another build that can be a frontliner, but you can't use any of the previous build options. Now, origin feats, you can get Alert, Lucky, and Tough are all good for you. You can't get Tough from your background because the Farmer background is the only one that gives that, and you do not want the Farmer background. It doesn't allow you to boost your intelligence, which you desperately need. So if you want Tough, you've got to get it through your species, which is human, or perhaps something like multi-classing, but let's not get into that with this. Basically, and then let's get into general feats. So the problem with general feats for a battlesmith is that you need to boost your intelligence. All of your spells are based on it. Your really strong artificer abilities are based on your intelligence, and it is your primary attack ability score as well, right? You're attacking with your intelligence, even though you're wielding weapons. The Battlesmith Artificer gets that at level 3, which helps them be more focused on a single ability score. But now it means all of those other feats we talked about don't apply to you because none of them boost intelligence, right? Grappler doesn't boost intelligence. Sentinel doesn't boost intelligence. Great Weapon Master does not boost intelligence. Even you can't even boost intelligence with like Defensive Duelist or anything else. So all of those are out for you. So what you're locked into is and this is what I would do with a battlesmith. Your very first feat at level, so you should start with 17 intelligence, right? Set it to 15, get +2 from your background, and then at level 4, choose a feat that boosts your intelligence, gives you a +1 intelligence. So Fey Touch, that'll give you Hunter's Mark. That's an okay way to go. The problem is that the bonus action from Hunter's Mark conflicts with the bonus action to command your Steel Defender, and your Steel Defender is actually at low levels pretty important to your build. At higher levels, its attack really drops off, so maybe you don't even care that it's attacking, and that's okay. Now you can start using Hunter's Mark. Keen Mind is a good one. Observant is a good one. Both of those, have a bonus action and part to them, but you're not doing those in combat very often. As a DM, I allow usage of study and search actions in combat to learn information about the monsters. A lot of DMs don't. And if you want to lean into that, these are great ways. But again, now you've got the bonus action conflict. Poisoner, same kind of thing. It can help you with adding damage. And the basic poison equipment item they improved in 2024 in that they removed the Constitution saving throw. So now it's just a straight 1d4 poison damage every time you hit for 1 minute. So the basic poison option is actually a pretty good option for boosting your damage, right? Now, poison is the number one most damage type that most creatures are immune to, or the most creatures are immune to, but it's still not like half. I think it's like in the 2024 monster manual, it's like 20% of them are immune to poison. So there are a lot of them, but it's a lot of undead and things like that. So you can kind of tell which ones are going to be immune to that or not. Again, applying the poison, though, is a bonus action which conflicts with your Steel Defender. Same thing, yada, yada, yada. Shadow Touch for False Life. False Life, they really boosted because they not only increased the number of temporary hit points you get, they took the duration off of it, which means you can cast it at the very beginning of the day, and you keep those temporary hit points all the way until you start your next long rest. So you don't have to worry about when to cast it. You just cast it whenever you don't have temporary hit points. Cast it, boost your hit points with that, which you need as an artificer because you have only a D8 for hit points, and you're not taking a lot of, at least not yet, taking any feats that are boosting your constitution. So you're going to have, on average, lower hit points than the other frontliners, and less of a way to deal with that, right? You have the same amount of hit point die that the monk has, but the monk has deflect attack, which they can use ad nauseum. Every round they can do one reaction to just basically zero out one attack. You have nothing like that. So False Life is a decent boost for you now, and Shadow Touch would be the way to get that. Warcaster, yeah, if you want to maintain your concentration, Warcaster is a good option. Now you do have a infusion that does the same thing as Warcaster, but if you don't want to spend one of your infusion options on that, then get Warcaster. Probably, I usually lean the other way. I think the feats are more expensive, so I'd rather use an infusion to get the advantage on my concentration saving throws and keep my feet free. Now, problem is with the Battlesmith, you don't have a ton of really, really great options. Like none of these are slam dunks anyway, so it's not actually terrible to get Warcaster. It's not even a bad option at all to get Warcaster as one of these options because you're trying to boost your intelligence. All right, then your second feat, just get a +2 in intelligence. Max out your intelligence to 20, and now it doesn't matter. Now, after that, your third and fourth feat that you get at levels 12 and 16, go ahead and choose whatever feat's going to give you the functionality you need, right? Heavy weapon build or a sword and board build. Get an offensive feat like Great Weapon Master. You're going to have to have 13 strength to get Great Weapon Master. So don't build if you want to do that down the road, don't build your battlesmith with an 8 strength. You got to get 13 to qualify for that Great Weapon Master. But yeah, now you're free to kind of choose whatever you want. Get a defensive option, an offensive option. Both are great. The Battlesmith actually struggles a lot with doing enough damage, so you might want to lean into the damage options that are available to you. And I'm going to end with this. This has already gotten longer than I was planning. So this is just going to be a teaser for part 3 of 4 now, where I'm going to go over some specific builds that I've created. Here are the builds that I've created for this. I'm not going to go over those. You see some tanks are listed. I'm not going to go over those in detail, but I want to just put them in there and then show some comparisons between the damage output of tanks in general and the damage output of frontliners in general. So I'm going to do the comparisons there, but I'm only going to go over in detail the aspects of the builds for the frontliners. And that'll be next time, part 3. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again.